Hello, this is Tad Murdoch with Georgia Wild Trout. Today we have got a quick video on dissecting small streams in North Georgia. So in our first spot here, we have a nice little plunge with two little seams coming down the edge. We're going to want to make a drift down either of those. We're expecting the bite as the fly gets back towards the rear of the pool where that big boulder makes a pillow with the current. Before we leave the hole, we're going to want to make a cast or two into the white water to get our flies washed around subsurface. You have to keep a tight line to detect any bites when the flies are getting tossed around.
All right.
Moving on to this next run, we have a nice seam on the far side. We want to make a run directly down this seam. It gives the fish the best chance to see our flies and get a clean hit on them, increasing our chances of hooking up. Before we move on from this hole, we want to hit the very top right corner where the deep water pushed up against those rocks is a great place for trout to hang out if they're a little bit lethargic. We also have a nice elbow here as the fly gets flushed down. They'll sit right on the corner of that elbow as well. And finally, just to be thorough, we hit the kind of bluff edge of the rock to the far right and then make one final cast right into the white water to get our flies flushed down.
Swing and a miss. There you go.
We missed the first strike as you saw, but we follow back up with another quick cast, which ends up in a fish.
Come on, no quick release.
Now Jason is going to move up in the pool where he's going to have to bow and arrow cast under the low canopy to the far side where there's a nice corner where there's some deep water and another little elbow tight to the seam there.
Go again.
We'll then make one drift into the fast water. This is not a likely spot for them to hang out, but if there's one there, he's going to be active and you'll get some quick results. So Jason has a nice plunge pool here. His first cast, he's going to aim towards the flat water that has less disturbance so the fish have a better chance of seeing his flies. He's hoping he gets swung around in that little eddy there and then flushed down along the laydown log. After covering that, he's going to go directly into that white water for the same reasons we fished the other ones. Though the current's not as strong here, it'll still tumble those flies down below, so keeping a tight line is a great way to get bit. He doesn't have any success in the hole, but I follow him up with a couple different flies, and on my first cast, come up with a really pretty brookie. Here we have a run that makes a 90-degree bend, creating multiple elbows alongside a fair-sized boulder. After we hit the pillow in front of this boulder and get washed down the seam along the side of it, we're going to want to make a cast into the gap of the white water upstream. This will tumble our dry flies around and get them flushed down into the calmer water below.
Yep.
So Jason had his go. Now I'm going to start fishing the far side of the boulder and show them some different flies just to see if they're being selective today, which we kind of noticed they were doing earlier in the day. I have a trout come up, check it out. Wasn't all that interested, or at least not interested enough to really take a swing at it. So I try to make several more casts to try to get him to commit. He came up directly from below this overhanging rock, so I try to hit that area repeatedly to try to get him to come back out again. Also, you'll notice I hang my flies towards the back of the pool right before the log and maybe let them dance there or skitter around a little bit. This works extremely well for brook trout, especially in the smallest of streams. They cannot stand that fly dancing around in the back, and a lot of times they'll come up and eat it when it's just sitting there fighting the current. My last effort is going to go on the very, very far elbow in the back. Pretty low chance that they're back there, but if there's one hiding, he might be hanging around those rocks over there. So we give it a bow and arrow cast to give it a shot and still come up fruitless. Jason's got another good plunge pool here. He's going to go right for that flat water and hope to dance around in the eddy before getting flushed down the seam. He gets bit pretty quickly, and one thing we want to do here, especially with brook trout, is to get right back in that pool immediately. Some trout you want to get to set back up and give them some time. These brook trout, once they come up the first time, they're ready to eat.
All right.
This pool we're going to break down into 3 parts. The first part we're going to cover, of course, is the tail out, the flatter water towards the back. There's 2 easy seams along the side of it, 2 quick casts, and then you can move up and cover this middle section.
All right, let's creep up.
So now we're going to cover the water below this laydown log. Rather than try to cover this whole run with one cast and making that really long, difficult cast up under the log, we covered that backside. Now we can move up and cover this middle section. We've got 2 little current breaks under the log that lead into seams. We're going to cover the far one first because it's a more preferable angle. Then we'll take a step out and cover that inside. We've made our way above the log. Now we have a current seam running its way down a rock edge. This is a great place for brook trout to nudge up against that rock and eat whatever they want.
A little bit more left.
Before we move on, we're going to make one more cast into this fast water just to see if anything's there. Not a high probability, but you never know.
Yep.
Here I've got a small hole with a bunch of different counter currents leading into it. I'm going to high stick these dry flies here and try to get it right over the deepest water. Doesn't take me long to hook up.
Oh, there he was.
We had fun with the brook trout above the waterfalls, so we headed back down and figured we'd pick on a rainbow trout or 2. We start off at this deeper hole right here. A few currents coming in there. We're going to cover the deepest water first just because it's the most shelter from a lot of birds that might hang around the area. We made it to our last hole of the day. We know there's a fish in this hole. We just got to find him. We struck out on the last one. There's two major currents coming into this little pool that drop off into deep water. Jason covers both of them here with no luck. As a desperation move here, I take off my rear dry fly and go ahead and throw on a small dropper. I know they're here. They should be biting. For some reason, they don't want to come to the surface. So just as a kind of a proof of concept, I go ahead and throw it in there. On my first cast with the dropper through the deepest water in the area, hooked up with a nice little rainbow, and we got a quick picture, then we hit the road. I hope y'all enjoyed our little brook trout adventure and learned a little bit of something about fishing the small water here in North Georgia. Just remember, if you're going out on your own, always start above the waterfalls for the brook trout. It's going to be rainbow trout mostly below. Good luck on your next adventures.